Uh, quick thumbs up. You all could hear me okay in the back? Not too much of an echo? Okay. Yeah, they're fixing the feedback there. We'll probably get another mic in a second. It looks like the mic just went out. So today's a hybrid meeting, hence the TV. If we do go to public comment or if we have any questions for the team, we're going to have another mic that looks like this that I'm going to try to walk around the room, or if you could come to the center. The reason is for that is really for Zoom. So tonight's meeting is being recorded. And these mics, obviously you can't hear me through this mic from the speaker. This is all for the computer and for Zoom. So that's why, if anyone calls out something, just know the people on Zoom aren't able to hear you. That's a good segue for those on Zoom. Just so you're aware, we have Mayor Stephen Miner. He's listening in. There's currently a commission meeting happening, so him and his staff, Blake Coven, are on the call. We also have members from Commissioner David Suarez's team, Joe Magazine's team, Commissioner Laura Dominguez, Commissioner Christian Rosen Gonzalez. They're all currently in the presentation and awards meeting, but their aides are on the call joining us, as well as Commissioner Tanya Bont. Vice Mayor Alex Fernandez is on the way. There's a bit of traffic. He'll be joining us shortly, as well as our new Assistant City Manager, newly appointed, David Martinez. He's on the way over. Again, there's two dueling meetings tonight, so thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, my name is Kevin Polito. I'm the division director for the City of Miami Beach. I'm going to help facilitate today's meeting. And then we have Brad Kane. He's our interim director of public works. That's going to facilitate the discussion today. And then supporting him, you have the deputy director, Jay Fink, and then as well as our city engineer, Christina Ortega. And we're all here to facilitate this discussion, answer any questions that you all may have. So I'm going to invite Brad to come up and just explain our mic situation again. So if you just stand here, you're going to have these two mics. One's for Zoom. The other one is so everyone can hear you okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brad Kane, and I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me now? Okay. My name is Brad Kane, and I'm the interim public works director. My name is Brad Kane. I'm the interim public works director. Alongside me, I have Jay Fink, who's our deputy director, who will give part of the presentation as well, and our city engineer, Christina Ortega, here to help answer any questions. I'm just going to kind of do just a little bit of an overview of the Stormwater Master Program that we have and just how it came to be. So we got to this point from public meetings, data collection, analysis, modeling, and that's how all of these projects and lists and everything were formed. Back in September 23, there was some public presentations and public feedback that was taken into consideration when all of this was being done with our consultant. And at that point, we also then went the next month to, in October 23, to our FERC, which is our Finance Economic Resiliency Committee, and presented all the findings. After all of that, we got to a point. Sure. Is it? Maybe that's easier. Yeah, I'm not even, it's much easier probably this way. So then in October 2023, as I said, we made a presentation to the FERC committee. And after all of that, all of these concepts and ideas were incorporated into a master plan that we have today. The master plan, by the way, just so you know, we can help provide you with that link to Kevin and his team, is available on our website. I'm just going to give you a link to that so you can see all of that information and data from it. The approach that we took for the stormwater master plan is a combination of neighborhood improvement projects, water equality projects, and critical needs infrastructure projects. And just to get into that, the difference is neighborhood improvement projects are more on the big scale type projects, where there's road raising, a lot more things are being done, and it's more of a bigger effort in the community versus neighborhood critical needs projects, which are more stormwater drainage type projects. And you'll hear about that a little bit and how that affects the Lakeview area. I apologize for the microphone. would it be better if I just spoke without it or no? You okay? Okay. Um, so we have a neighborhood improvement project list, which is basically like a 10-year plan. And there are a lot of projects by community on that list. And again, we just go on to the master plan, lined up by all of it, and year funding, what's funded, what's not funded, and it's a 10-year plan. Again, that's all available on the website. Same thing for our critical infrastructure needs projects as well. There's a list of them all, and they're available on the website. And again, specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about Lakeview and where those fall on the list. On the neighborhood list, it's 42. Unfortunately, a long way away. Again, that's a bigger type project involving the road raising, harmonization of the neighborhood, and things like that. The critical project one is number 15. I don't believe that is starting for the 2017 for design. And that's the construction of the 2025. Again, this is going to get more into that as we go along the process. But those are the two different type bonds. So just understand. One is the bigger thing. One is the bigger neighborhood one, and one is relatively more to like the smaller segment. That focuses more on green. Just a little bit more to talk about this. So these projects are all designed to deal with storms, roadway, life resiliency, and sea level rise. Those are all major factors that are taken into consideration for these projects, because obviously, the way the beach was built a long time ago, they have a lot of flooding issues in different areas. And all of this master plan is designed to address those and improve all of the community, so it makes everybody's life a lot easier. What we do now in certain areas throughout the city is we do have temporary pumps that we put up during rainy season, and that helps alleviate some of the flooding or drainage issues we have in certain areas. Some areas, in the city are more, inclined to get more flooding, and it's a little bit more difficult to address it. But the good news is we do things, during the course of rainy season to help, influence areas that are more infiltrated with this issue than others. So we do things, because we also realize that these projects are not all lined up right away to happen in every neighborhood. So that's just wanting to explain a little bit of that to you know. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fink, and he's going to talk more about the critical infrastructure project, which is number 15 on the list. And he'll kind of talk about the parameters that are with that project and what that project does. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm really glad that everyone came out tonight. This is our opportunity to tell you what we have in store, what we have planned. You to give us some comments and some feedback we can take with you as we approach design drafting. Everything that we're dealing with in the neighborhood is based on elevation. We're talking about what happens with king tides that we're experiencing right now, what those elevations are. By way of putting it in perspective, this morning's tide was at an elevation of about 1.7. When I look at the area that's here, the dark blue is on this map represents areas that are less than 2 feet in elevation, which tells you that there's not a lot to go. I don't have to tell you all, because you live there, you know exactly what's going on. A couple years back, we struggled with putting seawalls in. And we added tide points so that seawater on these king tides could come back up. And since enhance that with those temporary pumps that are out there, so that as the water does collect, we pump it back over, and it keeps the streets relatively dry. For those of you that have very low-lying yards, you also know that despite keeping the road dry, because of the porosity of the soil that's here, that groundwater table is encroaching and coming up. So you tend to find puddles in your yard, you know, the street is dry, it's just the groundwater, it's there. So that's what the project is aimed at looking at. And as Brett explained, it's not a comprehensive neighborhood project that we're looking at starting construction in 2033. It's a critical need. And what that means for critical needs is that, again, we're targeting the very lowest of areas and to enhance what has already been done with the existing drainage improvements that were made a few years ago. We're looking at putting in very large 60 and 66-inch diameter pipes in the ground, which will act as storage for the water that we are going to collect. 66 diameter pipes is big. And when you're talking, you know, hundreds of feet of that, there's quite a lot of storage. So this is what has been incorporated into the drainage master plan that you have been heard, and there are links in the website where you can get to see what it is citywide. But this is really what it's going to entail for this neighborhood, is to put it in there. Now, that is what we've been approved in the drainage master plan. I will tell you that, you know, the regulations, environmental regulations promulgated by Durham at county level, DEP at a state level, those continue to evolve, continue to change. By the time we get around to the design of this in a few years, there may be additional criteria that we will need to adhere to, which may alter some of this design. Well, it may not be seeking large pumps or pump stations, things like that that you've heard of in other areas. Can't stand here today and say that's not going to happen. It may happen. We don't know. We won't know till we start putting the design together, submitting that design for approval by the regulatory agency. And at that point, they're going to say yay or nay. So at that point, when we start to get into that design, there'll be another whole series of meetings at a 10% or 20%, 60% type of scenario, so we can tell you at the time, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're thinking, here's the current design, where we're going with the engineers, and again, we can accept public input. So that's really where we are today, what we have to sort of lay out for you. Christina Vega's with us tonight, so if there are specifics about, you know, some of the design criteria or some of the current stormwater criteria that may come into play here, certainly happy to try to field some other questions. But again, as it stands right now, the limits of work that we see in major construction is limited to these streets, short section of Delaware. But that's what we're looking at talking right now, and all of that's going to be tied into the existing drainage system.
So the question was, what's the parameters? So Jay's gonna go over, exactly where, what are the cross streets here, so you have a better understanding.
Christina? You want to- Question is exactly what is it?
Okay, so we're looking at 50th Street and 51st Street. So up top, we're looking at 51st Street, and this is 50th Street. Looking at it between Cherokee Avenue and this is Delaware Avenue. So it includes on the Lower Avenue, the block between 50th and 51st. And what is being proposed at this time, again, conceptual, per the recommendations of the master plan, is adding, again, the large diameter pipe for storage. And in addition to that, we're adding additional inlets mid-block, which currently don't exist. And so, this is intended to capture that water at low points. We're also including, some level of regrading of, of those areas. And what that means is we're going to adjust the grade to make sure that that water sheet flows to those existing and new, proposed inlets, so that we're collecting that water. We do know that we have very specific grading issues, and I know I'm looking at you guys because we've had this conversation, and it's a real concern to you, to your family and your homes. So that is, in a nutshell, a little bit of what's conceptually proposed.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up for Q&A. I'm gonna go around the room with this mic. If you could just state your name for us. We have a lot of people here today, so if we could try to keep our comments within 2 minutes, just to be better.
Thank you. My name's Gordon DeRosa. We live on 15 Delaware. We don't have drinking water, right? So rely on drinking water. Delaware. And water up, but at the time, that water. Kind of that by that
So if you'd like to, if you want to come up here and I'll point to it exactly, but you mentioned that you were right here on 50th Street, close to Delaware Ave, right? So there's currently no inlets and no drainage there, and so the light green shows that this new drainage infrastructure that's proposed for that purpose, to add the collection system, to add those inlets, for that reason.
Thank you.
Well, that would be determined as part, remember, this is a high-level concept at a master planning level. We're gonna have, an engineering designer look at it very closely. We're gonna survey the topography of the area, and we're going to regrade, the elevations to make sure that that water is flowing towards the inlets, and whether those inlets are located in the swale, on the side of the road, that will be determined at that time. I think it's very important to know that this type of project, again, the team here described how big neighborhood projects, they're the $100 million type level of infrastructure. These are much smaller in scale, in the scope of what we're doing. So one thing that we're not doing here is we're not gonna go into private property as in other bigger scale projects where they're racing the roads and harmonizing into private property. That's one of the areas here to understand that, you know, it's very limited to the right of way.
So Christina, I'm gonna jump back and forth. I'm gonna go here, just state your full name for us, and then I'm gonna jump over here, and we'll go back and forth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Louise Bauer, and my first question is, what is the approximate start date of the project? How long will the project last? And my concern is that I am getting water coming up from under my house into my house, and I live 3 houses from Delaware, and it's my understanding that Delaware is the lowest point. So those are my questions.
So when it comes to the elevation of your home, I do, you know, as the team mentioned here earlier, if you open up a hole in the ground, you'll find that the level of the water is gonna be about the same level as what we have here in the canals and out in the bay and out in the ocean. So So the, what, what I'm trying to say is the water will find its level. And that area of your home that's most impacted at this time, it's highly likely that it's at a lower elevation than the other areas of your property. Um, we do have a private property adaptation program where the city offered some counseling and grants to private properties that have that type of issue. You have to go through an application process and we can provide the information as to where to apply, where, we go and look at the specific conditions and provide you some advice and some recommendations as to what may be done, as well as a monetary, contribution towards, those improvements in
What
private
we'll do
property.
is, again, sign in. So if you give us your email, that way we'll send you a copy of that map so you have it and the presentation. And then we'll also send you information on the private property adaptation. So I'm gonna keep jumping around to the front and then work my way back. Luis's other questions? Can you just? The time frame, if you
The
could
time- yes,
give us,
absolutely.
a more
Yes.
on the time frame.
Absolutely. So for, specifically for the critical needs projects, the proposed timeframes for the projects, we are initiating, starting last year, initiating 2 of these projects into design per year. This one over here is number 15 on the list, and I just don't want to give you the wrong information. I'm gonna find the. So we're looking at a construction start in 2033. And the expectation, as far as the duration for construction, is in the 1.5 to 2 year range.
And 2030. So 2033 is when the project will start? Design. So,
No.
yeah, it's, right now,
Okay,
this
okay.
is all about critical, so we're gonna have Jay, just, this is the fastest project is 2033, so Jay, I guess, walk us through.
If I,
So, Jay. No, I mean, that's a great question. I think, ultimately, bringing that up, sharing, and I know there's a lot of different views, I guess, on how to proceed with this. To her point, how do we reprioritize this? That's something where really I think the elected body, could play a role in, by reaching out to your elected officials, to try to see how they could reprioritize some of the other projects that are ahead of you and move yours forward. Or on the contrary, if that's not the way you'd like to go, that's another way you could do that. I'm gonna let Brad comment on that, and then let's try to stay in order for questions just to get through everybody. And I'm gonna come to you, Bob.
I just want to make a couple of comments so it's crystal clear to everybody, as I said earlier. So these are the smaller level projects that are slated to start design in 2033. And there's absolutely no road raising as part of these projects. I just want to be very clear about that. Those are more in the big NIP projects that we have and the bigger. The smaller ones are really more focused on stormwater management. And that's really critical to understand that. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody in the room understands that as we're talking. That is not the focus, and harmonization are not the focus of the critical infrastructure projects. And the other issue, obviously that's a question, is when these lists are compiled and there's a lot of analytical data, modeling, everything that goes into these, it's done through a very integral process how the list is created and designed based on need and really where the worst areas are in the city. And that's how, if you go through it, you'll see. And when we actually had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, when we had that event, that's odd days in June, where we had this tremendous amount of downpour of rain for those 2 days, we looked at everything afterwards and it really mirrored the list that we had in terms of the areas that were in most need based upon what happened during the event. So, it's just, that's kind of how it is. So it's not, that, we understand everybody has issues and needs. And of course, we'd like to do all these things sooner than later. But, there's a lot of economics involved in it. These are billions of dollars. So, again, the lists are the way they are because of the level of prioritization based upon the needs and all the modeling. And that's how, they really came together.
And just, I'm gonna go to you now, just to clarify the timing, because Christina whispered in my ear, 2033 is that start date, design would be 2031. Then we could have a discussion maybe later about, like what you had mentioned.
Okay.
Let's state your
Right.
name for us.
Peter. Quick question. What is the definition of minor street regrading or raising? Yeah, what's the threshold there? A, B? The swells, is the swells part of this project too, where if you're gonna be putting in those, storm drainage systems and new inlets, are you also going to be adjusting the swells? And does that involve the driveway aprons? Is that within the scope of work? And then last question is, so what is the time frame for the street raising and harmonization?
So with regards to your first question, regrading. Regrading, we're talking about a matter of adjusting inches, if you would. Plus or minus 6 inches. It may be 10 inches somewhere, but it may be 2 inches somewhere else. The intent is to adjust the topography to ensure that the water, the runoff flows into those inlets as opposed to ponding where it's not supposed to.
And the new inlets are gonna go where it's currently ponding.
Well, again,
Yes.
we're gonna study the topography and we're going to locate those inlets at the low points and we're going to regrade the roadway.
But there's no definition yet of
To-
what that,
It hasn't been to that level of detail yet. We don't have a survey for the entire area. Although there's some areas we've looked at previously.
So I'm gonna
Sorry.
keep moving forward.
how about you put in the new storm drainage? Are you working in the swell area? And are you working in the aprons, the driveway aprons?
There may be some work, in those areas. The one criteria that we're trying to adhere to is that we will not do work in the private property side. So the elevation at the edge of your property will remain. That elevation is
Like
the
crop-
back of sidewalk. Correct. Yes. We may, yes, yes.
For the harmonization and street raising?
The bigger project, the neighborhood project, is currently number 42 on the list. So that
2070?
we don't have a,
That means for past, if the critical projects is 2030, what would be, what's the time frame for the larger project?
So our Vice Mayor just joined us, so thank you, Vice Mayor, for joining us. I'm gonna give you an opportunity because you helped us organize tonight. And then we'll go back to some Q&A.
Thank you. I'm Alex Fernandez. I want to thank you all for coming out. And I want to thank the staff for being here for organizing this presentation. First and foremost, I want to apologize if there was any misunderstandings out there, any miscommunication. we're working very hard following the guidance of our staff to make sure that we implement the right science, the right technology for your neighborhood to make sure that any flooding issues, short-term and long-term, are remediated. I'm sure as Christina has explained, there's two projects that we're looking at, a long-term critical needs project, no, long-term neighborhood improvement project. The neighborhood improvement project, that's number 42 on the list. I believe that's the more intense project that is more involved. It addresses the long-term challenges and that's the project that includes road racing. What's been the focus more recent of our discussion has been the critical needs project. The critical needs project that addresses the short-term remediation that we can do. And I believe in this area, it focuses 50th Street, 51st Street, and Delaware Avenue. Is that correct? All right. And that does not involve road racing. Is that correct? Okay. And that is the short-term project to help address the lowest lying area where the science has told us that you all need the greatest relief. I'm here just as an instrument to make sure that you guys get the improvement that your neighborhood needs. If it's the consensus of the neighborhood that you don't want this, I won't advocate for it. If you guys want it and want it sooner, I'm happy to advocate for it. I'm here to represent all of you. And I don't have an agenda here other than to represent you. So I apologize, I got here late. I'm not sure if you guys ever noticed, but there's traffic in Mid Beach and I got stuck in it. But I'll listen to your feedback and I'll make sure that we continue advocating on your behalf. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Jordan, I'm gonna, hold on, let me continue up and down and then we'll get to you. Mr. Burkow?
Thank you.
There you go.
I think there are a number of people that are here today because they are experiencing flooding. They have experienced flooding recently in the 50th, 51st Street, 51st Terrace area, and and 49th. And they're here today because they want to see the critical needs project accelerated, not done in 10 years, done as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Again, tonight's feedback, that's what the team wants to hear. Well, not wants to hear, but that's the feedback we need in the sense. That's why important. Just to show of hands, when you heard about tonight's meeting, was it all via email? The signs in your neighborhoods? I guess for emails, raise your hand. And then did anyone see the signs, little yard signs? Oh, good. All right. They're effective. I'm going to go to Mr. Bob Coons.
As somebody who's born on Miami Beach and my family home has been here since the 1950s, I need to give you just a little history of why I don't trust what you're saying. Don't take it personal. On D-Day 2018, our former mayor tried to slip through without even a hearing that we were going to be number one. After yelling and screaming, and my husband, thank you very much, died of medical neglect from University of Miami. He and I attended 50 meetings to stop this menace. If anybody has any history, what happened on Palm Island and Hibiscus Island, they raised the streets, they tore out the trees, they polluted the bay, took 4 years, and the water ran into everybody's homes. And they kept their mouth shut because they were afraid if they opened up their mouth, the city wouldn't finish the job. 4 years. So what is the urgent need all of a sudden? A comment came, unfortunately, we're number 42. I don't see it unfortunate at all. Lakeview does not flood. There are certain areas there. We need to understand that the city will admit we're not the problem. Then the city doesn't do what they're supposed to do, which is to clean out the sewers and clean out all the other crap so that when it does rain, we have some relief. They didn't do their job. And we went to Public Works to find out what was there for a year. So I feel like we're being snowed again. What is the critical need? Yeah, fine, for your house, but not for the whole neighborhood. See, what's happening here, excuse me,
So, okay,
don't trust the city. Once they open up,
Bob,
once they open up that door, they're gonna go after everybody. So stop playing games here, okay? Because you want to play your little scene, that's fine. But the bottom line is, our neighborhood is not a flood district and the city will admit it. The point is, there are certain people who have had a problem. The big thing that we had in June was a one-day event, not 2 days. It was gone the next day. It doesn't flood. It was once in a blue moon, if we even have a blue moon. And the bottom line is, when you talk critical need and you want to move it from 42 to 15, there's other considerations going on here. Is this for flipping houses? Is this for getting people out of the neighborhood? Is this tearing our district? Or maybe the issue should be that we should be a historical district. And by the way, with 200 homes in this district, how come there's only 40 people here? This is a critical scene. Why isn't everybody here? And did you notify everybody? This is not a small issue. And I could tell you with resiliency, it took 8 months for the city even to get the resiliency thing. And all of a sudden you're talking about all kinds of meetings taking place. None of us even knew about it. What is going on here? My home doesn't flood. I'm sure somebody else has a problem. That's fine. Somebody else may have a problem and we need to look at that. But I'm just warning you, don't trust the city with this game. There are people here who are developers and people who want money and people who want to tear up the neighborhood. And there's all kinds of issues going on here we're not discussing. And politicians have gotten money. And we need to understand if we want to save our neighborhood, we can't go along with this. We better ask some serious questions. Because this is a con job if there ever was one.
thank you, Bob. Thank you. So again, tonight, we're not gonna be solving, the flooding in the Lakeview neighborhood. We're gonna, take your comments. Again, the whole point of today, take back your comments, sign in, send us your emails, so that way we have comments either for or against the project. So I'm gonna continue to go around. I did a few on this side. I'm gonna come here, then jump that way. I think you still had a question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nancy Ratson. I wanted to associate with what Jeff Burkow and Helene and others have said. This is critical to this neighborhood. It's a wonderful neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood to raise a family in, but it's really critical because it's getting worse every single season. People, at the last, I think it was June, people were in kayaks on the street after it rained. It's just the water stands for so long and it's so deep. And so I really appreciate that the vice mayor said if there's a real strength of people, and I think there is a strength of people that are very interested in moving this project forward, that he's interested in helping us figure out how to advocate to raise it on the list and not wait until 2033 when this is happening several times a year in this neighborhood. And so I'm very interested, and I know there's a lot of people in this room and beyond this room that are very interested in figuring out how to organize so that our voices really can be heard by the city.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna go on this side. Let me come to you, and then I'll go back to you, and then I'll go to you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Henry Spiegel, and I live actually on the corner of 49th and Delaware. So I'm sort of right at the crux of that. And I'm just curious, so I see where the pipes are gonna be on 50th and 51st in Delaware. By putting pipes in there, is that gonna alleviate some of the flooding issues, which we have in our home? I mean, we had, one of our rooms flooded several months ago. Water came up through the floor. So those pipes, which are not on my street, would that actually help people on 49th Street as well? Or you have to be within that little, horseshoe for it to help in your home?
So if water is coming through the floor in
Yeah.
your home, that probably means that the elevation in your home is very low.
Right.
Below
It is the lowest room in our house.
And
Yeah.
this will not help that situation.
Oh, well,
So
okay.
For that particular situation, I do suggest that you get the information on the
The appeal.
private, the
part of it,
PPA
yeah,
program, the private property adaptation program,
Okay.
where the city is assisting private property owners in looking at, investigating those conditions, looking at what the recommended approach may be to overcome those challenges.
But but the pipes that you're showing there, is it only helping houses in that area? Is that,
Drain into that area, the whole basin, can you walk us through? Is it just for those houses or is it for
The benefits would be observed in the immediate vicinity of those areas. It's not, again, this is not intended as a full neighborhood improvement. This is targeted to, again, the 2 or 3 blocks in the neighborhood that were identified that we could help by doing this work. Now, depending on, again, the limit of the project may be extended by a house or two if we determine that there's a need, exactly. But we're also careful in,
So I'll tell you this, and this is when I go back and I say, I will, if it is the will of the neighborhood for this to move faster, I will try to do whatever I can to represent the will of the neighborhood to make this move faster. The adults in the room, being the administrative staff and our engineers, they keep on telling me, well, that means reprioritizing something that is based on science. And they're very adamant that the science indicates this is the critical area that needs it right now, that this is the lowest lying area that's experiencing the most amount of flooding right now. We can always explore expanding it, but the challenge is that this has all been right now based on science.
and again, if the feedback received is, hey, I live just south of the area and I'm experiencing significant issues, we can always engage in conversation if there's a desire to extend the limits of the project, if there's real concern and there's consensus that the area wants the project, that, that's always something that we weigh.
Oh, hey, my name's Sandra Mechelon, and I've been living in the area for 38 years, so I understand. I've been to a similar meeting that happened, I think, at least 5 or 6 years ago. Same discussion. What we're looking for is a stopgap measure because you're talking about years in the future, and they need help now. So there's a park across the street. I don't understand how come the city, there's technology so advanced, because I only saw one pump station over at Surprise Lake. Maybe the city needs to install some sort of pump in that area for now, which can be done rather quickly and, you understand what I'm saying, right? Because we have pumping stations. I think there's one across from Publix, unless I'm confused. I think the park is large enough. You can take a section of it, put a pumping station, address the flooding that's happening in those areas until you all get this project going. Because this is at least, you're talking now 7 years. I was at the meeting at least 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think this is about stopgap measures. What can you do now? Put a pumping station right there at the park, address their flooding.
And that's a great point. And just to your comment specifically about stopgap measures, this is technically the stopgap measure because the ultimate fix would be the neighborhood improvement project. And that, as Brad said, is years away into 2050. This is the stopgap, which is 7 years away. In addition to this stopgap, what you've noticed on, sorry about that. What you've noticed at one of the street ends by the Cherokee seawall, there's already a pump that's there, and there's a big green structure. That big green structure and that pump is another stopgap to just not buy time, but to assist with some flooding getting there. Jordan, I'm coming back to you. Hold on.
were telling me they.
Yes.
Look and see whether it's feasible or not. Pump station itself.
Yeah, we currently, for the neighborhood, we have three existing, well, we have an outfall out of Cherokee Avenue where we currently have a temporary pump set, and this helps the area, all up Cherokee Avenue. We have an existing smaller pipe down Delaware Avenue with an outfall that runs between two residences here. The difference is that on Cherokee Avenue, we have a street end with right of way that's owned by the city, where we have that temporary pump placed. In the other outfall, if we were to, perhaps we could set up another temporary pump, but this would be set up, in front of people's homes, right? So they would have to agree to it. We need to confirm if there was enough area that could
So Christina, we
accommodate.
have two follow-up questions, before I go to the gentleman in the green hat. I'm gonna go to Jordan first, and then hers is about the pump specifically. Christina, if you could just walk us through, is there only one pump in the area today that's
Correct.
existing? Okay,
Yes.
and then Jordan's gonna
On
walk.
Cherokee Avenue. I may be
So,
mispronouncing that, but.
first of all, Mr. Fernandez, thank you for coming and talking to us. I appreciate it. I want to echo the conversation about a stopgap because, we're talking about terms critical need and immediate relief. And 10 years is just not good enough. And I gotta think that we can walk and talk at the same time and find solutions that will give us relief today while working on longer term. I know you talk about community improvement as a long term, but that's an infinite time in the future that is not relevant to us right now. And presumably, in a few years, you won't be here. So this conversation with you, where we feel like you might be advocating for us, could be moot, along with the rest of the team here. So I really would like to urge everyone to find solutions that can help us now while still working on what I consider long-term. 10 years to anyone in this room, I promise you, is long-term, not immediate and not critical. So I want to ask you, what can you do to help us? We will need help either reprioritizing where we stand on the list or finding some creative solutions so that we can get relief today. So there is a pending item before the city commission. All of this goes through budgetary processes. Clearly, we're already into a new fiscal year, so we missed the mark for reprioritizing as part of the last budget cycle. There was outcry from the community. There was a lot of pushback. My colleagues were getting a lot of emails based on wrong information that was circulated around the neighborhood. But again, I have a pending item to reprioritize the critical needs project. And again, if that is the overall will of the community, I will move forward with that. At long term, the neighborhood improvement project, that's a bigger conversation. That's tens of millions of dollars, I believe. Meanwhile, the critical needs is a much smaller amount. So you have my commitment. If the neighborhood comes together, but I'll tell you this, there'll be a lot of misinformation circulated. I'm just going to be upfront because my office has received a lot of misinformation that was circulated, flyers that were sent that were meant to look like they were coming from the city, that were not coming from the city. Borderline defamatory information. And if it is the will of the neighborhood to push this forward, to reprioritize the critical needs project that addresses the lowest lying area experiencing the flooding, that incorporates no road raising, I'm going to need you all to organize, email my colleagues, because it is known that there will be a lot of misinformation disseminated out there, and I'm going to need your support in order to make that happen.
Thank you. Also, I'm gonna go next to Green and I'm coming to you.
Hi, Matt Tumbleson. I live on 51st. Good to see you, Alex. My question is around case studies. Do you have either something that we can look at where another part of the city had a similar problem and this was the solution that was used and kind of what it looked like after? Or another city or somewhere else that we can look at, just to understand what a world might look like after this goes in, what the solution really looks like, how long it might last.
The reality is that what we're proposing here, the majority of it is underground, right? We're talking about installing large diameter pipes and I think, I'm not sure if we touched on that, but part of what we're proposing here is that the infrastructure that we install is intended to be a part of the bigger picture so that in whatever year in the future, if the community so wants it and the city proceeds forward with the big neighborhood project, what we did here will not be throwaway. So that's a part of the criteria.
But I'm asking more about if
We,
there's a heavy rain, is there gonna be some water? Is it all gone? Are we expecting dry streets? More of kind of like what that looks like.
the level of service or that's what we call the level of storm that this is intended for is not the city standard, which is the big neighborhood projects where we install the large pump stations, and we look at the full neighborhood. Those are designed to address a 10-year, 24-hour storm. This is a much smaller fix, if you would, and it's intended to help to provide some level of relief, but the reality is that it's not what we call the city standard, the large pump station facility.
So what are they to expect to be different once it's installed as opposed to?
Well, I mentioned we're adding inlets in areas that currently don't have any. We are regrading roads along 51st and 50th that currently have low spots midway through the block. And that is an issue for some homes and some of the residents here. So those,
What are they to expect after this is done as it relates to flooding? Relates to 50th Street, 53rd.
so right now we have existing low points mid-block where the water ponds and is not collected. We'll be collecting that water and that ponding will be alleviated by this project.
53rd, 50th, and Delaware.
Correct. So should experience some level of flood mitigation. Again, this is a measured improvement, but there should be a level of improvement overall for the area.
It's not to the level that the city aims for, but it gets us closer. And then that technology that you're investing in there can still be used as part of the bigger project. So it's not to waste. You don't have to go in there later and replace that technology. It's still
Correct. And the reality is that in the neighborhood along Delaware Avenue and along Churro.
Sure. Don't kind of make you pronounce anything.
We do have some inlets and we do have pipes, but those pipes are much smaller. We have pipes in a foot in diameter, if you would. These pipes that we're proposing are much larger. That means they can hold more water. So the level of flood relief is greater with the project implemented. Say that again?
Project. I think I'm
Neighborhood. So at one point, the neighborhood improvement project, which is the larger project that helps the entire neighborhood, that at one point was a top priority. At that point, that city commission got a lot of backlash and it was sent back down to number 42 in the list, pretty much in the bottom of the list. So you have other neighborhoods now that are at a certain prioritization and they expect their neighborhoods to get done. For us to move the neighborhood back up now in the larger project, we're gonna be displacing another neighborhood that, was expecting it. This in the meantime, the area that is experiencing the worst flooding in the neighborhood gets some relief while we try to figure out, is there a way to expedite some of these other projects? I know staff is looking at, what we can do in terms of financing to see how we can expedite some of these projects. And there's some research being done, but as it stands today, yeah, this project, addresses that horseshoe that's there.
So I just would like to follow up because I don't want to compare apples and oranges. I was against the long-term thing where the streets were going to be raised. There are a lot of homes there where, people have been there for decades. They were told you're going to have to raise your house, not RAISE, but RAZE. And that was really awful. So it was wrong, but that was certainly what everybody was told was going to happen. I was against that proposal. This, where I guess you're digging up the street and you're putting in big pipes, I'm having a hard time understanding why you're not interested in doing that for the entire neighborhood, and moving it up faster instead of 2030. If that is going to help with flooding, I feel uncomfortable being right outside the helpful range. Nancy's house is not in the helpful range. It's like, it's 12 houses. It's the 6 houses here and it's in that horseshoe. If you're going to be doing that and tearing up the streets to put in these giant pipes, why aren't you tearing up all the streets? Because, yeah, we had to, yes, in our lowest room, about 6 months ago, maybe that was June, flooded. It came. So this can't. Yeah, so this isn't gonna help with that kind of flooding? Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes. The area that you're referring to is up here. And what we have right now is we have existing pipes and existing inlets that run all the way out at the street end. What we do currently is we have a temporary above ground pump that's located here that's, if you would, suctioning out of, if this was a straw, right? It's taking in that water and pushing it out over the seawall, out the outfall. And this is, again, this area may not flood to the level that this area back here does. This is here intended to assist those areas that are currently suffering, as you mentioned, that are flooding over here. And we have, so the full master plan, right? The full master plan looked at the entire city and figured out what would the entire city need in order to mitigate the 10-year, 24-hour storm. So we have, as part of the master plan, we understand the size of pipes and the size of the pump station that would be required so that the entire neighborhood would have the flood mitigation to that level, to that 10-year, 24-hour storm.
We look at study, as I get her point. If we could look at studying, is clearly the neighborhood improvement project would be addressing what she's mentioning. But of course, the neighborhood improvement project is much more involved. It includes the road racing to deal with the rising sea and sea level rise and all that. But their concern is the rainstorms that's causing flooding. Could we explore, whether these larger pipes that we're installing to deal with that capacity, extending that a little bit further to help mitigate some of these other areas as part of the critical needs?
We could, and we have to some extent. And it's important to note that those areas that are extremely low, when it's high tide, when it's king tide, and the ground level is at that level of elevation too, and the road in this area is below that level. Jay was showing you the elevations, right? The dark blue are the lowest areas. So the area we were just talking about is up here. And the reality is that anywhere where you see that dark blue, right now, when those high tides come up, that groundwater level is pretty high up there. So when it rains, on top of that, when we have high tide compounded with a rainfall event, that water will just sit there until the tide recedes. So So
Yeah, I'm gonna
the
come to-
water that we're collecting through Cherokee Avenue, we're pumping it through this temporary pump. And we're also using what we call a hydrodynamic separator that separates the debris and the sediments for water quality treatment prior to sending that water out into the bay. This is a city project that's been implemented both there, actually here at this park, we have another setting like that because 44th is very low lying.
And so we're gonna,
It
we're
would be
gonna
a
continue our Q
combination
and A.
of a large pump station, injection wells, water quality treatment.
So that's important to note that, one of the key differences between the neighborhood improvement project and the critical needs project is that with critical needs, you're getting these bigger, higher capacity pipes. But you're not getting the full gamut of the improvement once we get to the neighborhood improvement project. That's the one that actually has the injection well that actually can deal with the pressure of the rising water table to be able to have the water to go somewhere.
So I want to get to everybody who hasn't spoken. We have just like 15 minutes left. Luis wanted to follow up on one thing.
If one pump is good, I feel very uncomfortable with putting all the eggs in one basket, all the flood water in one basket. And since the Fisher Park is so large, as a backup, as far as redundancy, I feel that, it's just, the expectations of one pump is, I don't think it's going to do it. Number one. And number two, I'm not sure where that new inlet or something, you said that there's going to be something new near Delaware. And could you tell me, what is it in or is it pending?
So one thing that I try to explain every time I get a chance is that you're absolutely correct. Pumps alone will not do the job.
But two will do twice the job of one.
So when we talk about flood mitigation, we talk about two types of flooding. So when we talk about the rainfall type flooding, rainfall induced flooding, that's where the pumps could help. When we talk about tidal flooding, meaning the groundwater is coming up, the tide is coming up in the canal, the only long-term solution to deal with this is to rise above is the Miami Beach slogan, right? So for that reason, the long-term vision for the city is that those areas that are below those projected sea levels, groundwater levels, will need to come up to stay dry. So for that reason, again, we look at tidal flooding mitigation to be addressed by raising the ground. We look at rainfall flooding mitigation by installing these large pumps, these large pipes, inlets to capture that rainfall.
But
and
where
push it
is
out.
the inlet at, is it there or is it pending at Delaware?
Along Delaware, we do have some existing inlets. We have 18-inch, so a 1.5 foot diameter pipe that's currently existing.
Are you talking about the sewer grid that's on the corner?
Is
That's
a
called-
stormwater grid. There is an existing conveyance pipe there along Delaware. So with this project, what we're proposing is to connect that between Delaware and Cherokee and upsize that segment between 51st and 50th along Delaware.
And what's
with
that
larger
timeline?
pipes.
The timeline?
By connecting it to Cherokee, what ends up happening is that it goes to the outfall where there's a pump at, a temporary pump. And what we were discussing is that we can also speak to the property owners at Delaware to see if we could potentially install another temporary pump at Delaware. Which is to your point that, you know, we have the opportunity to put a second one. It may make
How
sense.
effective is it with gravity for water to go backwards?
So
Because you're saying that Delaware is lower and you're gonna push it backwards, you're gonna fight gravity and you're gonna send it to Cherokee. I don't understand that.
the pipes will be sloped, meaning they will have a tilt to
I
flow by
understand.
gravity, which may be different from the above ground slopes.
So, this gentleman here has spoken and then.
How you doing? I'm no engineer, but you obviously have a lot of people here who need like immediate relief. You guys call your list a critical list, but then you tell people it's gonna be in 10 years now. How critical is that? So maybe you wanna find a better name. But beyond that, isn't there something that can be done immediately with grading of the streets? 2 years ago, they ripped up the streets, they put in all brand new streets. Why wasn't grading handled? If there was a grading issue that could have been, put in place, and why not is that now? It took, what was it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? The whole neighborhood was regraded, was re-asphalted.
So the work that was
At least
done,
to throw it into the park. Throw it into the park, put all the water, slope it into the park while you guys get your critical list going. And at least then you can have your pipes, great, have the pipes. You can have that done in 6 months.
so the work that was completed is part of our ongoing effort to just provide maintenance to the roadways. We do what we call a mill and resurface. We mill about 1 inch of the asphalt and we place new asphalt. And the intent is to maintain the road as existing. This is just to refresh the pavement. Well, as part of a project like this, as I mentioned, regrading would be part of that scope. Definitely looking at the park, that is one thing that the city has been doing in some of its projects, enhancing the drainage systems within the parks to help the surrounding areas. That is,
Yeah, well,
there may be we can.
Yeah, it's not a no. It's
We can, we can certainly explore that. Just understand, this project, I think it was back in 2018, was number one. Not just the Band-Aid, not just the Band-Aid, the entirety of the project. The permanent fix for the entire neighborhood. It was number one. The neighborhood asked us, the commission back then, they asked the commission back then to nix that. It got nixed. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we provide relief for you guys? You guys are number 15 on the Band-Aid. And if we can, and we've asked our city manager, our assistant city manager to see how can we expedite that? And that's a pending items, but again, it's all money. It's all money and it's all also other neighborhoods that have been cooperating and have been asking for it and they've been in the queue. And so if you're one of those neighborhoods and we tell you now, well, we're gonna bump you off the list to put someone else, it's not fair to them either. So we're working on it. We're trying to figure out how can we get the funding to expedite this so that you're not number 15 and hopefully, we can, so that number 15 doesn't mean 10 years out. That's what we're looking at, how number 15 does not mean 10 years out. And in the meantime, we will look at what you are suggesting about the park, if that is feasible or not. We'll look into that and we'll circle back with you on that.
So, okay, we have a few people that still want to speak. You haven't spoken, and this gentleman hasn't spoken, so I'm gonna go to you and you as well. Then I'm gonna come back to Jeffrey. We only have 10 minutes, so let's try to keep our comments within 1 minute. We're not running out. We're not just gonna like run away. So if you want to talk to us, we're here to continue to have side conversations, but for the facility, we only have like about 10 minutes left. So again, I'm gonna go to him, you, and then back to Jeffrey.
Hey, I live on Lakeview. Where can I read about the current temporary solutions that are in place and the timelines and plans around those? The dates that we should expect the pumps to be there, the days they're moved out. Yeah.
So the temporary solutions, the temporary pumps are deployed during our king tide and rainy season, generally in the summer. And they're left in place through the end of the year. So halfway through December, we'll remove those until the following rainy season starts. We do issue advisories. Kevin, I don't know if you wanna. We do have a website that's dedicated to announcing our measures that we take during rainy season and king tide season. There's specific instructions about when the city opens up the parking garages. During that time, we have information there as to how to best report the flooding in your area, both so that our operations teams can go out there, check out and clean those inlets if that's what's going on.
Yeah, Gabby's gonna give you a card now so you could connect with us. And then that way we'll get you the literature so you could read on that. In respect to this and the timelines, we'll share with you this kind of this presentation, give you some background on that. And we could probably have some memos and whatnot that we could share. And the stormwater master plan that could speak to the dates and whatnot. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to connect with you. I'm sure, since you're, certified, you probably want to know a little more than the average, resident. So yeah, just shoot us an email and we'll connect offline. You and then this lady and then Jeff.
First
Could
of
you
all,
just say your name for us?
thank you. My name is Helena Crystal. Thank you all for being here and understanding how important it is for us to get relief from the streets pouring water onto private residents. Because that's what we're talking about. And to this gentleman's point, when you spent the money and you raised our roads with the new milling, when you raised our roads a few years ago with the new pavement, you didn't mill it properly. And so the water's not properly going down to the drain. Now, I understand that in 2008, because I was there when they were doing it, there was no proper milling to make sure the pitch was proper. So when you raise the roads, more water will come onto private property. Now, I'm absolutely right. I was there. Well, I mean, we've talked, I have my own engineer, we've talked to their engineer, they know that our street is not properly milled, it's not properly angled to go to the drain. And when they repaved the roads, they raised it, some areas are higher, so the water cannot go to the drain because it's going backwards. It's going uphill, so the roads are not properly milled in our neighborhood. It's not properly sloped.
So what we're proposing,
I'm on 50th Street. And 51st is the same.
so
Yeah, probably the whole neighborhood. It's the milling, the road work that was done was not done correctly, and it hurt our neighborhood. Two years ago.
to do this the proper way, that regrading that's scoped out as part of the project is really necessary in order to have proper slopes. Right now, you have a very uneven, topography, if you would. And we have been in
No,
conversation.
and they're very kind, but that caused harm to our neighborhood. That project that was supposed to help caused harm to Lakeview. And so, and I also want you to have compassion of, you raised our roads.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, again, given that this is so far out right now, it's number 15, so that means 2033, for construction. In the meantime, and I get that milling is gonna be part of this, but in the meantime, we had this issue with Palm View when Joe Gomez was here. We had this issue with Palm View. Yeah, there was an area that wasn't draining. We went in, we looked at the angle of the street and we determined, okay, something had to be done to, you know, just adjust the asphalt so that it just slopes better and to, you know, just help the water a little bit more, find gravity. You know, let's explore that. Let's explore that. We will get back to you on that because at least, let's say we can't find the funding to move up project 15 to happen quicker. In the meantime, maybe we can offer some sort of other alternative relief.
And I just want to add to one other thing. I can understand people were really scared because they heard personal stories. There was that one house that flooded, that never flooded in its history, but when they raised the roads, it wasn't properly harmonized and that private property flooded. So people are scared of the road raising, understandably, because if their driveway is lower and their house is lower, then it's exceptional. It's a lot of money that they have to do to harmonize. And it's personal money that they have to take out of their own money to raise their driveway. So please don't punish Lakeview in pushing the road raising projects aside when we have critical needs in drainage.
Of course.
So, you know, I understand that they push the road raising, but we have critical needs that are urgent here, as you know.
Yeah.
That's why we were number one with the road raising project.
Thank you, Lily First, 800 Lakeview Drive. Okay, I think she made a fantastic comment, but I wanted to ask, let's say you went ahead and did the project, not the major one, the one on 50, the neighborhood one, critical needs. Is it possible that if you did that, by doing that, it would just help out the other homes? Like if you were able to divert that water, then would their other homes still flood from the rain? Like the other people who are like 10 or 12 feet or whatever, the other ladies whose homes would not be part of that project.
So I do think that the neighborhood may see a level of relief from it, granted a mile one, and I don't want to overpromise as to the level of relief that you're gonna see. But part of what's being proposed is to connect the drainage lines that lay between Cherokee Avenue and Delaware Avenue, and by connecting those and with the temporary pumps that we have in place, definitely that, if you would, that suction that we're creating is not only going to collect from Cherokee, it will also collect along 50th, 51st, and what's connected through Delaware. So I do think that those areas that would be connected will see some level of relief, but I don't want to overpromise because again, this is, some may have called it a Band-Aid, right? It's a small level of relief that's being proposed, as opposed to the neighborhood improvement with a large pump station like Indian Creek, for example. That's um, that's our latest completed neighborhood project where you can go and see how that road was raised, how that harmonization was achieved, and how we're collecting the water not only from the race road, but from the adjacent road. It's all going to that very large pump station that's really helping that neighborhood. Indian Creek, talking about the improvements along Indian Creek, 25th to 21st.
Okay, so we're gonna do one final. We're not running away. We're gonna stay here so you can talk to us afterwards. We're happy to stick around. That she's gonna hand it to you. Again, tonight was all about outreach, getting in contact with you, staying in contact with us. Because we need to hear from the neighborhood, this is what we want to see, this is not what we want to see. Mr. Burkow?
Thank you. I have a quick question. I understand that 49th and 50th are like the lowest areas in the neighborhood, but I understood that there was a map after the recent rain events showing that the worst flooding events had occurred on 51st Street and 51st Terrace. So how are those streets going to be affected or helped by the critical needs project?
So the two areas, as I mentioned, are 50th and 51st, right? The area by the golf course up here that is currently being held by the temporary pumps that we have in place. The project itself, again, will provide the biggest relief to those areas that are included, right? The areas that are connected to it will also see relief from, again, being connected to the temporary pumps along the street and on Cherokee. Does that answer your question? Or were you looking for something more specific? From this project, they will not see increased relief. The relief that's provided to that area is through the use of that temporary pump on Cherokee Avenue Street. And that's always a possibility. It's a matter of always the budget allocation towards a project. And again, these projects were not envisioned to cover the whole neighborhood, although I do agree with you that that area does see flooding. I recognize that is true. We had a series of criteria that I do welcome everyone to visit our Stormwater Master Plan website that goes into a lot of detail as to how each area was studied and how the areas were prioritized, looking at a number of criteria. It gets into a lot of detail, and I do welcome everyone to visit the website, to watch the presentation, and to reach out to our team and ask your questions afterwards.
Thank you all for staying so late. We're gonna turn it over to the commissioners for some final thoughts. We're gonna close out. Again, we're not gonna leave if you needed to chat with us. Thank you to our parks colleagues, Jojo and the team for hosting us today. Vice Mayor?
Thank you guys for coming out. I do have to leave actually because it's my mom's birthday, so I need to rush home to see my mom. But again, there's great feedback from you guys. Certainly, we were just speaking with the Public Works Director. The next major rainstorm event will be out there to see what temporary relief we can offer in terms of the sloping of the road. Great feedback as it relates to a second temporary pump potentially at Delaware. We'll be happy to speak with the private property owner about that. Most certainly looking at what can be done in terms of funding to further expedite that project number 15 on the critical needs project. And so just keep in mind that, you know, all this takes time. For me to advocate on your behalf, I need you guys to help me when these items go to the city commission. And so that's where the strength of the neighborhood comes into play. My aide Monica is here. Monica is there in the back in the black blouse. Anyone that wants to meet with me, anyone that has any questions, you're more than free to get my cell phone number. It's 786-999-5662. Monica can give it to you as well, but 786-999-5662. Anyone that wants to meet with me, I'm open doors. I'm at City Hall every single day. So if you want to meet with me to discuss further on this project, you're more than welcome to. I'm happy to listen to your concerns, see what solutions we can get together, we can find together. So again, thank you for being here and we'll take this feedback seriously.